reach the right side of YouTube, if that's even a thing, right? Because, and I hope y'all can hear me because I have my little AirPod in. I'm in the library. My name's Alana Michelle Howard. I am working on my master's thesis. I'm a dance professional, and I'm just gonna walk through my studies with y'all. This is really for me mostly, but I also wanted to contribute my findings, which honestly, we'll get into it, right? Because there's nothing new under the sun. But I'm gonna put my own twist on some things. Hold on, let me find my marker. Where did the marker go? Here she is. Okay, so let me see how big do I need to write for you to see. Is it backwards? Oh, it's not backwards. Hold on. It's backwards. Hold on, I'm gonna have to flip the camera. There we go. So, um, this is my topic, right? So this is again. My topic is dance for healing. Um, I started this in undergraduate school, and it was what got me accepted into this program. And I've been in program for 2 years. And this next year is going to be about taking all the information that I've gathered and putting it into a show. So, um, I'll be going one thing at a time. Okay, let's start with some resources, right? Let's start with some people before me. So, um, where do I want to start? Where do I want to start? Where do I want to start? A few things popped up in my mind. J.L. Hannah, The Power of Dance for Healing, I think is the name of the writing, of the literature. I also started thinking about Catherine Dunham, of course, as far as just uh, Black ethnography or dance ethnography or uh, what they call it, ethno choreography or something like that. What else? And then Ife Tayo Kitwana, she did very extensive research in Chicago on the West African dance and drum community. Mama Ayo's West African dance and drum community in Chicago, and took the qualitative data she gathered from the people expressing their experience with the dance and then turn it into quantitative information. So I'm thinking of taking that same sort of framework, um, but one thing at a time. Okay. So I'll start with JL Hannah. I hope y'all can see this. I really do. Yes, y'all can. Okay. JL Hannah. She has a book called, and then excuse, oh, please don't fall. Please don't fall. Hold on, let me reset. She has a book. I think it's called The Power of Dance. JL Hannah. The Power of Dance, Health and Healing. That's what it's called. And in her writing, she says there's 4 ways people can use dance for healing. Let me take a step back. So we have, when it comes to dance for healing, we have creative arts therapy, and then we have people who use like a creative arts therapy is clinical therapy, right? People can be prescribed uh, or people can be directed towards a dance for healing specialist, um, like people with PTSD or things like that, right? I'm not a clinical therapist of any sort. I'm just a performing artist. And so, but I have used and experienced and witnessed the benefits of using dance for healing. So I just wanted to lay that out. But JL Hannah says that Dance involves the culturally mediated body, emotion, and mind. So do illness and pain. Dance may promote wellness by strengthening the immune system through muscular action and psychological processes, right? So this is another thing. We go into the mind and the body. Um, dance conditions and individuals to, dance conditions an individual to moderate, eliminate, or avoid tension, chronic fatigue, or other disabling conditions that result from the effects of stress, right? I was just talking about PTSD. Dance may help the healing process as a person gains a sense of control through one, right? So dance may help, she says, dance helps healing, right? By providing a person a sense of control through four different avenues, right? So it's about gaining a sense of control, right? Dance helps healing by providing a sense of control through, this is JL Hannah. One, she says through possession. That's number one. She states possession by the spiritual. Excuse my chicken scratch. Number two, she says through mastery of movement. Three, through escape or diversion from stress and pain, right? Coping. Excuse me. She says, let me go keep reading. Point three, escape or diversion from stress and pain through a change of in emotion, states of consciousness, or physical capability, which we see a lot of times people, and especially also in music therapy, where people gain a sense of control of their physical capabilities by way of the music. So let me add, she said emotion, states of consciousness, and physical capability. And then the fourth way is confronting stressors to work through ways of handling their effects. So this number three is to escape it. Number four is to confront it. Confronting stressors to work through ways of handling effects. Okay. So boom, that's JL Hannah. That's the basis of the different ways dance can be used for healing. JL Hannah, right? So of course, in my research, I do research with air quotes because um I hate to think of it as like I'm a researcher. I'm really just it's really something of my interest, right? But anyways, that's besides the point. I've seen all of these things. I've seen this in church, possession by the spirit. In church, what I mean by church is through religious or ritualistic acts or places or spaces. Yes. Mastery of movement. Let me get this book that I have. Hold on one second. I got this book, of course, Lambon Rudolph. I don't really know how to pronounce his name right, but I was looking into this book, so I'll write his name down. The Mastery of Movement book, which is a technique that's known by a lot of choreographers. Um, Rudolph. And then you have this escape or diversion from stress and pain, emotion, consciousness, and physical capabilities, or escape or diversion. I put I meant put or from stress and pain and again through emotion, consciousness, and physical capability. I've done this personally many of times, of course, as coping mechanism. And then confronting stressors to handle effects, which I've also done, right? There's a release that happens, what do they call it? Catharsis, coping. I'll put religion here or rituals. So these are the ways that I've observed dance for healing, right? Now, I'm going to get a little bit more specific with this dance for healing stuff, right? Because it's going to be very important, specifically for my research. Dance for healing, Black communities. So, where do I start with this, right? Um, well, first we have to identify the issue. Have another book, of course. Well, I guess I didn't show the first book. This is the first book, The Mastery of Movement. Uh, I'm borrowing this book right now, but that's the book. So kind of old book, but yeah, it talks about space and time and things like that. But this is identifying the issue, post-traumatic slave syndrome. I probably should also go back a tad bit because Dr. Joy, let me write this down. So I mentioned post PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, but we're going to talk about post traumatic slave syndrome. Okay. And this was coined by Dr. Joy DeGruy. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Um, but before her, there was someone named Dr. Naheem Akbar, which is the foundation of her research for post traumatic slave syndrome. Let me just lay the foundation of what he is. It Naeem? It's Naeem. I'm tripping. It's Naeem, not Naheem. Naeem, excuse me. Naeem Akbar. Now, he in I want to say like the 90s, or maybe the late 80s, spoke about. He wrote a book called "The Psychological Chains of Slavery," and it talks about although Black Americans are free from slavery now, there's still some mindsets that constrict us, right? Because of our conditions and our experiences in America, in the US. Um, Let me see. Psychological chains of slavery. And there's a very interesting uh video on YouTube of him speaking about the identity of Black people, Black or African peoples. And respectfully, I understand that not all Black Americans subscribe to being African descendants, which kind of goes into this PTSD, PS, post traumatic slave syndrome stuff, but we're going to do one thing at a time. So, Dr. Naeem Akbar says that there's three parts of our identity, and from my mindset, from my understanding, he says it's layered. We have the individual self. Hold on, let me make sure I say it right. I want to say the individual self, the community self, and the spiritual self. Yes, that's right. Uh, yes. So, he in his book of Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery, he talks about the mental, uh, like anguish that Black Americans experience, um, and that there's the individual self, the community self, and the spiritual self. And the individual self. Hold on, I'm just gonna put letters ICS, individual, community, and spiritual, right? Our individual self, how we relate to our community, and then the spiritual aspect. So, our identity, right, in relation to our history, our current state, and our future, right? And Dr. Joy DeGruy speaks to this, which I'll lay out in a second, about our self worth and self esteem as Black people. And then, or I'm just gonna say Black American. Let me let me be specific with this, right? And a lot of this, of course, can translate to other communities throughout the diaspora, because we've experienced a lot of the same things. But as a Black American, that is my focus group, um, because there are nuances that I am not aware of as somebody who's Black American, may not be from Brazil or the Caribbean or whatever, that, I might not understand, and vice versa. Caribbeans or uh, Brazilians or, Black people throughout the diaspora might not understand those nuances that we experience in the US. But back to what I was saying about the individual self, Dr. Naeem Akbar spoke to the self worth and the self esteem, and so did Dr. Joy DeGruy. I'm going to lay out what she identified in her research. But to the community self, um, it talks about this distrust that we have amongst each other, um, and then the spiritual self, a lot of the things spiritually we might not identify, even like some of these, I'm gonna be honest, some of these rituals and things I've seen, I haven't been able to truly identify with, due to my conditioning and programming about what's demonic or what's not, or whatever the case is, right? And so it's been a very interesting journey to just open my mind up to what is what. So just want to lay that out with Dr. Naeem Akbar. I needed to put him first, uh, up here, because, let me put it like this: psychological chains of slavery. And then we have post traumatic slave syndrome from Dr. Joy DeGruy. Excuse me. Traumatic. Cool. So she identifies the three things. Let me pull it up in this book. This is a great book, by the way. Some good stuff in here. Okay, post traumatic slave syndrome. So she mentions vacant self esteem, anger and violence, and racist socialization. That's her three things: vacant self esteem, anger and violence, and racist socialization. So, very similar to Dr. Naeem Akbar. Um, However, this racist socialization just speaks to um, how we look at life through a lens of race, right? What spaces we're allowed to go in based on our race, um, what opportunities we're granted based on those things, um, as well as, again, to the point of how we relate to our community. You know, we might not like certain things about our community and might not want to be um, associated with our own people because of how we see ourselves. Um, yes. So that is the problem, right? That is the issue that I'm seeking to heal through dance. So, how do we do this? How do we connect these things, right? So, I've been looking at traditional West African dance traditions. I've been looking at yes, traditional West African dance traditions. It might sound redundant, but just hear me out. Maybe I should change the word traditions to customs or something like that, or practices, because I'm looking at, for example, a dance and drum circle and the things from beginning to end, the practices or the ritual or the steps that's taken, even, um, yes, starting with traditional dance, but kind of leading on into modern dance and how it connects with the Black community, right? One step at a time. I'm thinking about so many things right now at the same time. So the first, hold on, I was thinking something. West African dance traditions. Okay, that's what I want to say. So I chose this, of course, based on the transatlantic slave trade. Let me pull up the slave voyages. And I identified um, some countries of interest, maybe. Hold on one second. Let me try to pull up the slave voyages. Introductory map to the transatlantic slave trades. Okay, I'm gonna try to show you all some, or actually, they have a um, what's it called? They have they have a simulation. That shows the countries, and here we go, the time lapse. I'll try to show it to you if I can. Hopefully you can see that well. They have a simulation. I'll speed it up a little bit so you can see. Yeah. And they have the time stamps down here: 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, ending towards a little bit the 1900s, right before 1900s. But it's showing where all the ships moved from. I hope y'all can see that well, and then where they went to, right? And of course, we know a lot of them went to the Caribbean. You can see not a lot are coming here to the States. Me personally, My family's from Florida, and I learned that my great great grandmother was Geechee. And so I'll get more into the study or the research and the findings I came across in these last 2 years. But I seen a lot coming from this area. So I identified Ghana, right, as a place that I wanted to, you know, learn more from. I also identified Guinea. Um, while being here at this institution, I was able to learn a lot about Congolese dance and culture. So the Congo, which I haven't gone to the Congo, I've only been to Ghana. I have plans to go to Guinea. And I've been invited to the Congo by Tabiza. He teaches traditional Congolese dance. Um, and of course, I identified Nigeria. I basically identified countries that I know a lot of Black Americans are familiar with as far as hearing about them. I also identified Liberia because of the history of Black Americans as trying to establish themselves in Liberia and Senegal. Senegal was the last place that I identified, I would say. Let me make sure. Senegal, Guinea, Liberia, Ghana, Nigeria, and the Congo. And I'm not leaving anything out intentionally. I'm just I just only identify certain countries that might be more prominent or known by Black Americans. Maybe Black Americans have an interest or something like that. And also again from the um slave trade map. Okay, so shall we get into what I've learned? Or shall okay, let me see, where do I start? I'll go back to undergraduate school. So I guess maybe I'll go a little bit further back. So me growing up, I was introduced to traditional West African dances from Guinea. And so I learned a lot of the rhythms, a lot of the movements, kuku, lamba, Guinea Fade. And so being able to practice those movements and listen to the rhythms, I was able to make connections to modern day Black American dance, music, and culture. However, when I continued on, especially in undergraduate school, and I was very intentional about connecting the youth to the culture, as in traditional West African dance and drum, they felt they were disconnected. They didn't like the drums was too loud, and they didn't feel a connection to it. So it made me perk up my ears to kind of make those connections on purpose, and or just kind of see where exactly the connections are. And so, of course, there's much reading and writing about what I'm talking about, but I'm speaking on my observations right now. And so the drum was very central, is very central to what I'm discussing right now, as far as using dance for healing, as in dance traditions, um, because the djembe, right? We're talking about. Let me put it right here where Guinea is. Right, the djembe is the drum from Mali, the old Mali Empire, and Guinea right now is like the top country known of famously for sharing traditional West African dance and drum thanks to Les Belles Africains. Um, and they've been doing their work since the 50s, and they use the djembes, the dunduns, things like that. Not to say there's no other instruments, but the djembe was the drum that I witnessed as a youth. And so when I went to Ghana last summer, I learned about the talking drum, right? And which I had already learned about the talking drum, but I got to learn it from natives, just a little bit, not a lot. That's why I want to go back. But um, with the drum being central to what we're talking about, the way that it translates in the Black community is through, I would say, uh, well, me being doing my studies in Savannah, Georgia, at Savannah State University. Um, I learned a lot about Black history in Savannah. If you don't know, there's lots of history in Savannah in general, but Black history is very heavy there, and especially since it's on the coast where you just seen all those boats coming through on assimilation. And so I learned while I was in Savannah that the drum was banned, right? And we weren't allowed to play the drum because it was a symbol of revolt. It sent out signals. It was a way for people to come together. There's a lot, right? And so, although there was just a lack of connection to the djembe or traditional West African drums, we see drums being very important in the church, especially in the Baptist church. Where am I going to write this? Some churches do not allow you to do music and things like that. But let me see, where am I going to write this? I'm just going to write, I'm going to write, I'm just going to write US right here real quick. Um, this is separate from all that. The drum set. And then, of course, as hip hop came through, and then we got we have, I don't even want to say hip hop. Yeah, hip hop came through. We got electronic things coming through, and we got the DJs, right? Now, our dance traditions as Black American people kind of is centered around a DJ and not necessarily a traditional or instrument. So I'll write down the DJ, right? So these are the connections I've been able to make so far as far as the drum. Um, Boom, that's the music part. There's other elements, but I focused on the drum because I also wanted to touch on. Let me see if I can go into. Hold on, right? We got to get into the ethnography part. I don't want to skip that part. We got into the psychology. We got into the um. Hold on, let me just pull this stuff over here so I don't go out the frame too much. We got into the dance for healing. We got into the psychology, and now I want to get into the ethnography. Right? I took a class by what's her name, Melissa Birch. She's amazing, and I got to learn a lot about ethnography, and I had never heard about it really before, outside of how it's used in dance. But to learn about it in her class, I got a lot of books over here, y'all. Bear with me. To learn about it in her class and how it started and everything like that. Here it is. Um, I was able to be informed on the history of the discipline and where Black people fit in it. So I'm going to kind of go even further back with anthropology and um, the the biological anthropology, right? Or the basically how people like Bloomingback, which is one of the founding fathers of anthropology, basically did studies on people of diverse ethnic groups, races, however you want to qualify people. With a very honestly, if I'm being honest, a very good research question, which focuses on like the different types of humans. So his question was really based on like why, okay, yes, we're all the human race, but why are we different? Why does my hair go up and then a European person's hair might go down, or why are some people's nose broad and some people's nose are, just getting into those things. What in the it's called On the Natural Varieties of Mankind, right? He was so he got into those things, and there's plenty other people, um, European scientists who contributed to these studies, and essentially this became the basis to justify slavery, because they basically decided that African peoples were not human, or were a different type of people, and therefore it's okay to enslave them, as animals. Um, that's another thing. But anthropology took a turn. I want to say, let me see, she said it was the heyday period. I want to say she said it was the 50s, 60s, and 70s, or the 40s, 50s, and 60s, where Black educators entered into the field to kind of debunk a lot of things that Europeans were saying about Black peoples, and not just only Black people, kind of contributed to the conversation about, how we're not just some people who, don't deserve human rights, right? But there was a lot of valuable information contributed to the discipline to pretty much stand up for Black people and say, hey, we are humans and we deserve human rights. Um, or to just give an explanation give explanations on the conditions of Black Americans at the time, right? So I need somewhere to write the I don't know where I want to write this. I guess I'll just write it here. Um, Anthropology, ethnography, and then let me see. It's a lot of very important people that contributed to the discipline. And I really don't want to just name people and leave others out. Of course, W.E.B. Du Bois, the first president of my Savannah State University, Richard R. Wright, um, a lot of important stuff. But I brought this up because a lot of important studies were focused on the Black man, and well, why the Black man wasn't present, why he is unemployed, what um, prison and things like that, right? And so that kind of became something I started looking at in my studies, is the importance of the Black man in community, right? In the in what it means to heal Black communities, and what it kind of takes in order to do that. Which, I mean, I'm just a girl, right? Like, I don't know. I was really trying to figure out how I could contribute to this healing, but I did identify the Black man as a important figure in the community, although a lot of modern, contemporary ethnography basically doesn't align with that. A lot of it is, very feminist forward, and we don't need the Black men, because the Black men served a purpose as a financial provider, and now that Black women are able to provide for themselves financially, then the Black man kind of family. I'm not gonna say the Black man. Families don't need to look nuclear, essentially. And so, in learning that in ethnography and studying uh, African dance traditions. Um, of course, nowadays you'll see any and everybody kind of doing, playing the drums and things like that. And then, but I saw a lot of men playing drums and women dancing, those dynamics. And then, of course, certain drumming was exclusive to maybe priests. Maybe there'll be like some women who, they're a special set of women who play. Okay, so I started making connections between the man or a male figure and the drum and how that shapes community, how the drum and the man are, I want to say central, but I don't want to say it in a way that derails the woman, but I'm just going to say it. How, I'm just saying it like this, the place a man plays in community, a black man plays in community, and the place that the drum plays in the community. And with the state that the black community has been in, where our men have not always been able to take their position, a lot of black women have stepped up to be in that place to, make sure the community still operates. And so I just wanted to lay that out, that I've made a connection between the black men in the community and then the drumming, right? Um, next, next. Where do we go from here? Oh, I was writing anthropology, ethnography. Um, 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 um. Let me identify something specific. Hold on 1 second. Give me a second. And so I'll get into Catherine Dunham next, right? Because I want to start getting into choreography or choreology or however they say nowadays. And this stuff got really deep, right? Because like I said, this specific discipline was the justification for slavery. So it started getting really deep. And my instructor or my teacher, she started from the beginning, like um she started from like the 40s and then went all the way to now. And so it was very insightful to see, first of all, how much Black Americans are studied, but secondly, to kind of learn about the reasons why, based on the data collected, why we're in certain states, what it takes to get out of those states. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Philadelphia Negro and I'm looking for something specific. 1 second. Hmm. Hold this page, but I think this is the one that I want to write down. Okay, yes, the Black Metropolis was a good one. What is the ghetto and how does it come to exist, right? I think that was a good one. Black Metropolis. Of course, the Moynihan report was a very big one. Um, okay, I'll go with the Negro family. And this one was, yeah, yeah, the Moynihan report. And yeah, this is a good one. Okay. Yeah, because he talks about the Negro family, the roots of the problems, and the tangle of pathology, and it kind of explains the cycle, that the psychology. Yeah, so I'll go with the Moynihan report. I'm also gonna write. I'm also gonna write the Black Metropolis. So these were like very important, and if you know, you know, right? But these were very important studies done on Black communities. Um, but the uh, about one of my favorite things that my teacher Melissa Birch shared, and I'll write it up here on this side. That she shared after we read the Moynihan report. I think I spelled Moynihan wrong, but okay. She wrote this: legacy of slavery plus modern day racism plus inadequate policy, right? Nothing to protect us legally. Policy equals weak family structures. I'll put equals here. Weak family structures. So we know that families make up communities. So if the families are weak, then the communities will be weak. And so then she kind of created this circle so that we understand that um, this creates an ongoing socioeconomic problem, right? Because we never address the legacy of slavery, the racism, or create a way to support, right? To support what's happening, and then it creates weak family structures. Um, so I thought that was very valuable. And then let me see, let me make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot of valuable information. I could kind of sit here all day with this ethnography stuff. Um, Libo was debunking that poorness is hereditary, right? That was something that they kind of put on us, is that it's hereditary. And proving that is actually a circumstance of social and economic life, right? So we don't have these opportunities. There's racism. There's things in place that kind of inhibit us, and so I can, like I said, I can go on and on about the valuable information I learned in this class, and it informed this right here, the psychology, post-traumatic slave syndrome, and kind of just provided me with a lot of uh, supportive information, right? Um, Even though Libo and Moynihan disagreed, right? They both still provided a lot of information. Um, I don't want to spend too much time on this part. I just want to get back to I want to get to the movement, right? Because that's what I do, the dance. So um, eventually, I wanted to. Oh, and this one is Ngomas. Those are the drums in Congo, Ngomas. And then I haven't gotten a chance to go to Liberia, Nigeria, or Senegal, but those were places that I identified that the Black American community could likely resonate with. Okay, so I want to get into the movement portion. Of course, I have this first Black Dancing Bodies book, right? And this is a great book. Of course, there it talks about the Black body, and basically, I mean, it talks about a lot of things, but something important that I got from it was just about being a spectacle, right? Going through the ridicule of media and how the world views us as Black people, based on how we were portrayed in the media, based on what they said who we were, right? And so just looking at everything, even down to the spiritual levels, right? Down to the spiritual levels. Um, I wanted to make sure I included this book as well. Hold on, let me make sure I put everything where it goes. um, but yes, needed to make sure I had that Black Dancing Bodies book to, another foundational book. Okay, so now that once I read that book, right, and I got to get the words to be able to express how when we do something as simple as rotate the arm, show our back, how we're seen as a spectacle, right? S- Uh, so to the movement. I want to get to the movement. Um, where to start with the movement, right? Where to start? So if I go to I automatically want to start at the feet. I automatically want to start at the feet. We can get into percussions. It's a lot of things. I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start. Okay, let's see. Movement. Let's start with the dance traditions. Okay, I'll start here. I'll start here. Should I really? It's so many places I can go because it's a circle. Hold on one second. Bear with me. Because this is where everything connects, right? We're talking about dance traditions. We're talking about community. We're talking about how we in Black bodies relate to each other in community. We're talking about how dance can be used for healing, even on spiritual levels. It's a lot. We're talking about the music and how our body connects with the music, and it's a lot. It's a lot of levels we can take this. It's a lot of directions we can go with it. And so this is where I am. Um, okay, let me pick a dance style. Let me pick, I'll just, because I'm going to Ghana, I'll just focus on Ghana, right? I'll focus on Ghana. No, I can't. I can't. I can't just focus on Ghana. Why? Because Guinea has the drum, the djembe. I'm going to erase these right here just because I'm going to put them on the side. Actually, I'm going to put Nigeria, Liberia, and Senegal. I want to be able to relate this. I'm going to put the US over here too. So it says USA drum sets and DJ. I want to be able to connect it to right now, but because Black culture is not just one thing, right? Or Black culture is not just one thing, but as far as our music and dance, right? We have so much, and so it depends on the person. It depends on, and that was another thing. Maybe I should go into Afro dance therapy. Afro dance therapy. That is the program that I started to kind of implement some of this information, right? And naturally, I wanted to, although although this is the problem, it doesn't affect all Black American communities in the same way. Some people will say, "I'm not no victim. None of this affects me. I don't identify with this." Right? I don't have problems with anger and violence. I don't have problems with self esteem. I don't have problems with racist socialization. I don't have a problem with connecting spiritually. I don't have a problem with connecting with my community. So they don't identify with this. They don't see a problem, right? Which is very interesting because it's still a disassociation from your community and your identity and your history. But um this Afro dance therapy was my resolution to this. And when I created it, I initially started with Who will be in the space? Who will be in the class? Will it be men in the class? Will it be women in the class? Will it be children in the class? Will it be women and children in the class? Will it be men and boys in the class? Who will it be elders? And I started to cultivate the classes based on who will be in the class and how we can cultivate relationships among these individuals. So in that way, the classes took a different structure, right? And I learned a lot. So let me start with I'll start with I'll start with the man, I'll go into the woman, I'll go into girl, and I'll just do children and then girl and boy. So in facilitating this dance for healing program or dance therapy program, I already knew that women and children were gonna come. I didn't have a problem with getting them to come. It was the man that I had a problem with trying to invite them into the space, get engagement, participation, and things like that. I think we were successful at bringing four men, three Black American men, and one non Black American man. Yes. And the style that we used to bring them in was crump. Crump is a dance style from California. If you know, you know. And it's a very expressive. It falls in the category of escape or diversion or confronting stressors, and sometimes it can even go depending on how deep you go. It can go into well. I want to say it can go into the spiritual aspect. There are groups of people who connect crump with Christ and things like that. Um, but that is the style we used. And in using crump in order to connect with the men, um, it was just a matter of teaching the crump language so that a person would be comfortable expressing through that style. So it was a matter of um, language, language and movement, or movement language. I did a lot of informal informal questioning or informal interviews. I'm in the Detroit area. And so I would be like walking down the street or something, and I would ask a Black man, like, hey, how can I get you involved in what I'm doing? And one man told me that, oh, yes, men don't dance how they used to. We used to dance, we don't dance anymore. And so I started to ask myself, like, why? Like, why don't men dance like that anymore? And I don't think I really came to the answer. Um, I think actually his response or response that I got was usually men would dance to kind of impress women, or that it was something that had to do with the women, right? Like they would want to dance with the women or something like that. So I started to think more about social dances, right? Going to the club and things like that. That's a whole nother thing. Now, with the women, women were more open. We used the traditional West African dance, we used the Congolese dance, we used, I did like Afrofusion dance a lot to do with your hips and things like that. And we didn't have a problem. A lot of women loved it and it was very successful. We used the traditional African dances. When it came to the children, of course, a traditional dance class, we couldn't keep their attention for a long time. But when the children came with their mom, they were engaged. Maybe they might run around a little bit, but they'll hop right back in and be a part of the class. I made the distinction between the girl and the boy because what I noticed was we had a teacher Oh, this is another thing that was very important. Representation. When the boys were led by a woman versus when they were led by a man, it was different. Um, but what I noticed with the boys was that they weren't, as much as kids are gonna get distracted and play around and things like that. The girls could do a straight on dance class. However, the boys couldn't as much. They wanted to play around. And so a lot of the movement we did, we had to implement something that felt like playing sports, going through cones and doing certain footwork exercises, making it competitive in a way. So that was the distinction that it was about who was leading the class. And then for the boys, it was about making it play. Um, so that was some of the things I learned through facilitating Afro dance therapy. Now, when I went to, excuse me, when I went to Ghana, I went to Ghana for a week and then I moved over to Benin for a week and then I came back to Ghana for a week. I went to Accra first for maybe like a day, went to Cape Coast, went through the slave castles, went and I was also at the University of Cape Coast and learned a lot about the history of the slave trade from the perspective of African countries and their plans for reparations and some of the modes of things that they did to kind of cope, different songs, very much how we had Negro spirituals and things like that. They also had certain songs and things like that that they sang to cope with raiders coming in and taking family members and getting abused and everything like that, getting ransacked. And so from Cape Coast, we went to Benin, that is where I seen a lot of voodoo practices. And of course, like I said, with my background, my mindset wasn't fully open to what was happening. I was very much in the observer space. Um, as opposed to when I was in Ghana, I was very participatory because there's this, at least where I was in my experience, it was less, it was more general or more uh, what's the word? I would say it was more holistic in a way. Maybe there was elements that was very spiritual, but it wasn't blatantly from the places that I went when I was in Cape Coast. And I also went to Kumasi and Tamale. After I left Benin, I went to Kumasi and Tamale. It wasn't blatantly uh, any spiritual, ritualistic dance traditions happening, like where we're pouring libations and we're honoring a deity or something like that. However, when I went to Benin, I definitely experienced and seen, there was a funeral that was happening and there was rituals happening and people playing drums and dancing. Some people were falling out, and like it was some different levels in Benin. And in Benin, it's they're very open. I got to meet the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and through meeting him, um, like again, they're very open about their practices. They're not ashamed, and they also believe Black Americans need to learn their history and connection to voodoo. So I'm actually going to write voodoo down because there's a lot of voodoo practices that's done in the U.S. by Black Americans, especially in Louisiana. There's hoodoo, and things like that, which has to do with bringing in the Bible uh, to the practice and things like that. It gets deep. So where do I want to go? Yes, from Benin, I moved over to Tamale, and from Tamale, we did dancing. It was we did women centered dance, a lot of booty shaking, drums again. The guys were playing drums, the ladies were booty shaking. There were some dances that were done for the kids, but it was again playful. It was a lot of like hip bumping and running around and like jumping over a foot or something like that. Um, while the women's dances were very like we booty shaking. There's a ring. I don't want to say ringleader. There's maybe a man who is guiding the women. Like if you're really shaking it nicely, he'll guide you over to the drum so you can dance in front of the drummers. um so yes, that is some things I observed. And again, that was very much about dancing. It wasn't really spiritual ritual in a way that was, there was money involved. That was a part of the interaction. I don't know if that was regular practice or if that was because we were guests in the village, but that was experience I had. In Tamale, I went down to Kumase for 1 day, and that's why I'm gonna go back because I want to spend more time in Kumase um to learn more about uh, the Ashanti people, their dance, their traditions, their culture, and um, I think it would be of interest to a lot of Black Americans because the Ashanti Kingdom was a very strong kingdom, and they're known for gold and just being very strong in their culture and fighting against the colonizers, and it didn't get overtaken for some time or conform to the implications of the colonizers for some time. So, um, in Kumasi, I got to go to the Kumasi Culture Center and watch some of the dancers. And thankfully, one of the workers at the hotel came with me to the culture center and sat and watched the show with me. And so while I was watching it, I got some context as to what I was watching. And I did see some, I think I seen two dances. I know one of them that I seen was specifically about a man honoring his wife and telling her how beautiful she was. There was a lot of hand movements here. And so these are the type of things I'm looking to, identify and kind of make a connection to for Black Americans to kind of help with our communities in a way, in whatever way it can, because again, a lot of Black folks do not feel connected to African traditions. We're hundreds of years removed from African traditions. I found that a lot of African Americans are connected to jazz, right? Still very much live instruments, but um, heavily European influence with certain instruments, and or at least the quality of the instrument, right? Because there's all types of wind and string instruments that come out of the motherland, but the quality of these instruments are heavily European influence. So, looking at gospel, jazz, soul, looking at these where the culture was much more, the community was much more together, and the music was different. There was a lot of love songs at that time, during those times. And so being able to make those connections, how can we how can we use that music and those movements and kind of implement them back into the culture to cultivate the community again, right? So trying to get back to the movement, I want to start with the feet. So um let me see if I got, usually I always feel like I need a book or something to kind of like get into this part, but it is something that I've like that I've been able to experience. So honestly, I am the source of information for this portion, and like but I'm gonna see if I can find some writings about it, which all of this stuff is proven, right? All of this stuff is proven, but um, that's what we're doing, right? We're researching. I have plenty of. That's what I'm gonna get into. I have plenty of academic writing, literature, and things of that nature of people before me who do the same work, whether they're practitioners or performers or whether they're dance for healing professionals, as far as um, like in psychology or what. So I'll just share them. I've already mentioned Kitwana. She is kind of who I will be structure how she's an example of how I'll be structuring my study when I go back this time. But we have I'll just start here from I hope I'm gonna say this right. Nabois, Jennifer Nabois. She has dance movement therapy used as an intervention to heal racial trauma within the Black community. This is a literature review, but she pretty much has the evidence with dance movement therapy as an intervention for the racism and things like that. The racism. So that's one person. Um, she mentioned that the literature covering racial trauma within a dance movement therapy lens is limited. And so although I'm not necessarily a dance movement therapist, I do want to be able to contribute um what I do understand as a practitioner. Um, but she lays out in her writing, she lays out dance movement therapy as an intervention. She says the first and most common method is called the top down method. It includes talk therapy, right? So dance movement therapy, they mostly, and I've had interviews with Ife Kitwana. I've interviewed people from the Black Magic group or sub organization that's a part of the American, what is it? The American Dance Therapy Association. Yeah. And they all speak to the fact that the movement is, in addition to the talk therapy, is used as an additional tool to process, right? So the first common method is the top down method. So and it starts with talking and understanding what the trauma is, right? Understanding this. And then the second method includes the use of medicine to manage symptoms. And I've also been looking into not necessarily drugs, but herbs for certain things. And then she said the last method is the bottom up. This focuses primarily on the body. Research has shown that trauma is held within the body. Um, Talk therapy helps individuals that are in a pattern um, to basically talk about what the sensations they're feeling in their bodies. So, of course, in Afro dance therapy, because I am not a clinical therapist, I did not want to ask these probing questions and bring up certain topics without the expert in the room to kind of help subside or be a support for individuals that might bring these up. But I did want to be able to provide these tools for dancing for people to, express, escape or confront the stressors, right? And then going to certain conferences or having conversations with certain individuals, again, going to church, I was able to experience these possession by the spirit. Um, and I'm sure I will many more times in this discipline. But it says there is a need to examine the body and the responses. So there's a level of awareness when we're talking about dance for healing that we if we're gonna if Black Americans are going to use dance for healing, there's a level of awareness we have to have in our body of how what has happened, the generational trauma, how it affects our bodies now. And so that's why I said I was going to start with the feet, right? So maybe I'll start with the knees, right? Some people that are young, they might have knee problems or back problems. We can talk about epigenetics, we could talk about intergenerational trauma, we could talk about a lot of things, right? But we could just talk about the sensations in the body. If you feeling certain pains in these areas, even on your shoulders, in your back, right? Being able to be aware of those things and then be able to have the tools in dance to kind of again feel like you have a sense of control and use the dance as a tool to deal with those things. That's the physical part, right? Then you have the consciousness and the emotional parts. That's the talking part. We have to have an understanding and a connection. So this is why this part was so important, and it gets very tangled because it's different from for everybody. Not everybody in the Black community is going to identify with all of this from Ghana or from Guinea, or not everybody's going to identify. So I know I bit off a big piece of steak. However, again, in the ethnography course that I took with Melissa Birch, we talked about autoethnography. We talked about participant observation, and also in the performance study course that I took with um, Mr. Mbala, he we talked about how to report when you are also a subject, essentially. Like I am also who my research is about. So how to acknowledge my body and my embodied experience while not um, allowing that to um, hinder me from understanding the community that I'm entering in when I go to these African countries, right? Um, so yes, a lot of valuable information in this one. I'm gonna go to the next one, but this is another very foundational piece of literature. Uh, this one talks about this is Bria Campbell, Past, Present, Future, a program development project exploring post-traumatic slave syndrome using experiential education and dance movement therapy informed approaches. So it's helping African American adolescents in Chicago uh explore and understand, explore and heal from post-traumatic slave syndrome. So this is not a new thing that I'm embarking upon. However, this Afro dance therapy is still under development. I've seen like Afro Caribbean dance therapy as an approach as well, which is interesting because again, it's Caribbean. Uh, so really being able to implement something specific for Black Americans since we hadn't had any adequate policy implemented in our government to support us post slavery, right? Um, and that's a whole nother thing, right? Um, and nothing explicitly for Black Americans, right? Um, Healing emotion. Okay, cool, cool. Now, I have also, this is another good one, of course. Uh, Montero and African dance as healing modality through the diaspora. Use of ritual and movement to work through trauma. So it starts with, well, it starts with, and I don't really know how to pronounce this, but I'll just Ndup. It's a Senegalese dance ritual, and it does include possession of a ancestor, right? And then we have Uh, we have Zar. I know this is a Middle Eastern. I've witnessed this one, and so I'll get into the similarities I've witnessed through these certain dance rituals. Right. This one is thought to have originated in Ethiopia. Zar. I've witnessed that one. That was nice. Guinea dance, of course, which I've mentioned, and then we have Trump, which I've also mentioned, and I think that's it in this one. Yep, that's it. So those are the dance for healing rituals through the diaspora that was mentioned in that one. And then I also got the chance to speak with Miss Connor. I think her name's Cayenne Connor. I got to speak with her briefly online to kind of get a little bit of mentorship on this sometime last year. This one is called African Dance is My Therapy Perspectives on the Unique Health Benefits of African Dance. And so she's a practitioner. She's also, I think she's in, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want to say she's in some sort of, okay, this says mental health policy. There it is. Policy. Yes, I wanted to say she was in some sort of policy stuff. Okay. She mentions that traditional West African dance can improve the physical dimensions of health through engagement in a variety of movements, steps, and patterns that can be vigorous, mild, or mild for lower intensity workouts. So this is what's being cultivated, right? Um, we getting into the physical and the emotional, and then let me see. She also has a lot of uh quantitative information up here to justify the fact that African dance can be used for healing and has she's used it for these reasons. So another important source. Let's see. Here's another one. This one is Akinlana Borores Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, a literature review on African American community healing and expressive arts therapy. And so this is another good one. And again, they a lot of us, speak to the same points. It's been proven. However, qualitative data is not valued as much as quantitative data. So that's why Ife Tayo's work is the framework I am seeking to use for collecting information or organizing my information and collecting information. Great, great, great stuff. Yes. Hold on a second. And in this one, uh, there is, of course, a mention of post-traumatic slave syndrome again, intergenerational trauma after slavery, um, the shadow of trauma on African Americans. Yes. And then I think I did that one already. Yeah. So that I'll get to this one finally. Um, this is why this one is important because I'm gonna see because my if you can still see me. Okay. It's important because Ife Tayo Kitwana, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, is a dancer, but also a dance movement therapist. And so this is a creative arts therapy thesis. And she talks about um, how it says a community that dances never dies, an ethnographic study on people of the African diaspora within the African dance and drum community in Chicago. So She talks about dance in West Africa used as a ritual for healing, the uses of African dance as an intervention, the methods that she used, and everything like that. So let me see. I want to go into the methods, if that's okay, because I want to be able to. I'm going to erase this and lay out what my methods would be based on what I already have, right? And again, being able to tell, being able to implement myself as a subject in a way that doesn't disturb the lens in which I'm collecting information, I think will be very valuable because the same community I'm seeking to heal is I'm a part of. And so me being in country, doing the dances, learning the rhythms, learning the culture, being immersed, I think it will be very valuable to be able to uh, document and share the knowledge because it'll be much more embodied versus if I'm, trying to teach it, you know, to the next person. So I'm going to go to page 28 about the methods. So, of course, she used participant observation, informal interviews, and in depth interviews. Again, this is on Black American communities, African American communities using West African dance. Um, but she says that the primary focus of the interviews were to find out how the participants experienced the African dance and drum community socially, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So she collected the information and turned it into quantitative information, into data. But before I go this way, I'm going to erase this. But before I go that way, I wanted to identify the similarities I found in the dance rituals, right? So there's always a um, warm up in a sense that happens, right? You kind of have to get your body comfortable. If you're in community, a lot of times the rituals are happening in community. I've seen the czar ritual done as a performance, much different as an individual than it is with community. It always entails drumming, all the dances entails the music. It's essential, right? A lot of times it might start with some form of circle, whether you're walking in a circle, you're moving some part of your body in a circle, the head spinning, something like that. I always witness that. Another thing, the drums, rhythms are usually, of course, we talked about traditional African tradition. We're talking about dance traditions from Africa. There's polyrhythms, so the rhythms sync up with the feet, and then there's another rhythm that you might do with another part of your body, whether that's the chest, the hips, or the arms, or the head. So that's why I said I wanted to start with the feet. I usually see rhythms done with the feet specifically, with the hips, with the chest, with the arms, or with the head. And always there's a squat. There's your knees are bent. There's always in the squat position or a low position, and clapping, voice is involved. Um, I mean, it's not abnormal what we see in regular dance. I guess I'm pulling it out because these are the tools that we use to get here, right? To get to feel that sense control, to be able to get to the catharsis, to get to the spiritual possession, to get to the being able to use it as a tool or as a avenue to express and release. So it comes back to the movement language and identifying a cultural dance, right? Uh, and so for women, it might look different. For men, it might look different. For the children, it might look different. So, boom, back to I'm gonna erase this. We got that. Hold on, let me get out of the way. We got that. Let me get the eraser. Eraser. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Next, I want to get into the methods. So the last time I went to Ghana, honestly, I was just getting my feet wet, you know. I was documenting. I documented mostly through video. I documented mostly my experience. Um, I didn't do any interviews or any formal interviews. I did some journaling. Um, I did some journaling. Like I said, I went to University of Cape Coast. I got some valuable information there. Um, so let me see if I can pull that up. Let me just put all this over here. I'm doing one thing at a time. Got this from Tabiza about the Congo. Gonna keep that. Keep that there. Okay, here it is. So this is what I got from University of Cape Coast. Um, it says the wound and the voice, verbal articulations of enslavement through the Bosa and Kasina of Ghana. Emmanuel Sabaro. So he's the one who wrote this. I got to meet him. I got to take class with him and learn a lot about slavery from the perspective of from Ghanaians. And so it says this paper draws on theories of trauma as a basis for critical reflection on how songs can enhance our collective understanding of the slave experience within Africa and specifically Ghana. So he had us think about kin and who we consider our kin. Um, he said these studies have been often silenced on on how those who lost kin during slave raids within Africa, where the bulk of slaves were mostly captured, have often tried to cope, represent, and reconstruct the memories of their traumatic past. The paper emphasizes the significance of understanding the historical, cultural, and literary context that continue to influence the shape, the production, and performance of these songs. How slavery has shaped African societies and how local communities continue to endure these legacies. So, uh, being able to make the connections, right? How same way that we coped as Black Americans with the legacy of slavery and how they've coped. Um, Let me also pull. Just trying to make sure everything's in order. I'm pulling information that I gathered when I was in Ghana. Yep, that's what I wrote. Healing dances, Ghana and Guinea. Mhm. Okay, so this is important. Just making sure that, yes. Okay, this is it right here. Boom. Research method. That's another book. Research methods in dance sciences was another book. How I will conduct the study this time around, right? But uh again, also being able to implement my experience as valuable without overshadowing. So let me just start from the top. So very important stuff from that other class. Oh, this important. Okay. Uh okay, from here. So I was looking at a book. body symbol in Christian and African worship, the challenges for celebrants and participants today. That was another book that I learned a lot of information in. Um, Back to what I was saying about being a Black American, having certain mindsets about African traditions and what's wrong and what's right. That book was a good book to kind of help me understand certain ritual or symbolic things. Worship as body language, introduction to Christian worship and African orientation, same thing. It talks about the pattern of motion, rhythm, syncopation, certain proverbs and sayings. This is what I wanted to be able to add as well. So, like I said, my great great grandma, who actually recently just passed away, like maybe a month ago now, she was 96, I would say. She was 96 years old. I learned that she was Geechee. And so, fortunately, I was able to go to the Penn Center. I'm a Penn Center scholar. And I was on a plantation for about 5 days to learn more about Gullah Geechee culture. And of course, over there, they're trying to take away the Gullah Geechee history and turn that space into whatever they can turn it into. Um, that would be more, I don't know, for tourists or for people who might want to go golfing, right? Um, a lot of things I knew because I'm in the culture and my family is connected to it, but some things I did not know. One thing that popped up for me was, and it was before I even made it to Ghana, Africa, or um to South Carolina, was this Anansi spider thing. And so I kept inquiring. I'm doing my studies, I'm doing my research. I was finding these folk tales. So Anansi is a spider. And from my understanding, and I'm sorry, we're going this way for a second, but I'm gonna bring it back. Don't worry, okay? It's all connected to African traditions and how this work will culminate into a showcase for my thesis. So hold on, thesis show. So it's a folk tale, and from my understanding, the spider is well, in South Carolina, what I learned that the spider is, when it made it to the US, the name became Aunt Nancy or Auntie Nancy, Aunt Nancy, right? So Anansi versus Aunt Nancy. And the spider, when I was in South Carolina, they were saying, and I've heard this growing up, to never kill a spider, to just always just sweep it outside. It's bad luck, right? And I have a granny who's very into fortunes about good luck and bad luck and things like that. So never kill a spider. And when I was in South Carolina, one of the elders were telling why to never kill a spider, because the spider, he said his wife told him to don't kill a spider because that's her uncle, right? So because it's an ancestor, I can't spell today, right? Because it could be an ancestor, so don't kill it. And so before I was going, and this is why I want to be able to implement my experience as a Black American going to Africa and learning the history and things like that. Because before I went to Africa, I'm telling you, 2 years before I even went to Africa, this spider spirit, or they call it a trickster spirit, it was following me. And when I say it was following me, it would be spiders in the weirdest places. Like, I had a roommate who was very somebody I didn't want to live with. So I moved. And when I moved to the new place, every day that I walked up my stairs to go to my apartment, there was this big, big spider in the corner, like a big, big spider. And I would see spiders in the weirdest places. Even when I moved here to this area in Michigan, I'm seeing a spider in the bathroom. How I get a spider in the bathroom when I don't have any windows in here? Maybe it came up the drain, or very conveniently. So one day I was downstairs in a lobby where we have a computer lab, and I left everything to briefly go upstairs, grab something. I don't know if I went to the bathroom to grab something or what, but I did that. I was coming back, and there was a spider dangling down in the hallway. And I'm so scared of spiders that I just kind of started having a small panic attack. And then I couldn't call anybody. I don't know why I feel like somebody was gonna be able to save me. I left my phone downstairs. So I had like a little moment. I was like, why are these spiders like getting my trying to get my attention? Like, what is this? Who is this? If it's a family member, who is it? And then so I go to Ghana, same thing, spider on the airplane. I don't know how many times have y'all seen a spider on the airplane before? A spider on the airplane. Spider, I'm at the market. I went to go buy something from the market. I go through this little underground thing. Spider in a thing, like spider in the car. Spider. I think the last straw for me, when I knew it was no more a coincidence, when I was walking down a road at nighttime with somebody I met in Ghana, and there was this wall that said, Anansi's watching. And mind you, it didn't say Anansi is watching. It said Anansi with an S watching. And they said Anas is something. Like Anas is was two different words because Anas is, I don't know, some surveillance of some sort. That's what they were telling me. Anas is, but it said Anasi's. That's how I read it. Anasi's watching, and I took a picture of it. Whatever. So I was like, "This is no. I don't believe in coincidence. This is not a coincidence." And so Anansi, I started looking before I even went to Ghana about Anansi, who is Anansi the spider, and Anansi is known as the trickster spirit. It's all about this. The main story that I read was, or that I heard. I'm a video person, and so um, it was the spider shot a web up to God, and I want to say requested all of requested to have authority over all of the stories or all of the wisdom in the world. And so God gave the spider three impossible tasks to do. And it was something like wrangle a lion and go put all these three creatures inside of a bag and bring them back to me. And the spider did it through trickery, through cunningness, through, like deceit essentially. And so with me, like again, with the mindset I have about growing up in the church, I'm like, what is this? Like, how is, I'm in my mind thinking these things. And so when I go to Ghana, I'm still seeing the spiders. Then I go to a bookstore and I see these books about Anansi. Anansi, like Anan Se with an E. And this one is a boy. A boy, he's a boy. Here's the books here. Anansi means he's mad. God's challenge to wise people. This is about Anansi as well. Anansi and friends at the village of plenty. And so these books honestly take in my eyes, an unconventional approach to storytelling because in the US, a lot of our stories, there's like this morale at the end, which these also have a morale, but the morale is in favor of the antagonist. rather than in favor of the protagonist, right? So, like, say for example, you have a story of an underdog, and the underdog has to go through all this strife to get to where they gotta go, right? And then there's an antagonist that's trying to block them, and then they overcome the antagonist, and everybody hates the antagonist, and everybody loves the protagonist. Yay! End of story, right? Happily ever after. These stories are like Anansi is the main character, he's the antagonist, and then there's people who become victims of his antics. And the morale of the story is to not get tricked by the main character or somebody who would be like the main character. So it's kind of like the person who is not in the wrong is the one who, it should be learning a lesson, and not the one who is in the wrong, if that makes sense. Like, I'll give you an example. And which story was it that I read? There was a story about Anansi that I read that said, um, basically, Anansi, there was somebody who owned a piece of land, and Anansi came up on the land and started kind of like eating off the land. And that person caught Anansi eating off the land. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to take you to court because you're stealing from me." And so Anansi said, "No, this is my land. This is my documents right here. I have my paperwork for the documents right here." So he went to court, and apparently Anansi won the court case. And the lesson was make sure you have your documentation, which was very interesting for me. Like, wow, very interesting. So, anyways, back to the morale, right? It was about what I learned from this was um it was about wisdom and not about using your. Oh, this is another thing. Let me mention this before I get into that. When I went to Tamale, it was a young boy. I asked him, he was maybe like 20. I asked him, I was like, "What you know about Anansi?" He said, "Oh, Anansi, Anansi the spider." He didn't say Anansi the boy, he said Anansi the spider. "Oh, yes, Anansi the spider." Anansi is known as, um, basically, Anansi is known as just the creepy thing in the corner, because it once had all this wisdom, but then thought it was bigger than God. And so God, well, okay, this is what he said. He said Anansi was a man who had a lot of wisdom, but thought he was bigger than God. So God made him the little small thing in the corner, a spider. And so from all of this, what I got was to use your wisdom wisely, right? Be wise with your wisdom. Um, that's one thing. But um to also be wise enough to not get fooled by someone who is being cunning or being wise, or who is using their wisdom in a bad way. Um, and oh, one of the most major things that happened with the spider thing one time. This is another example. I was at my mom's house, and this was actually right before I was about to move to Michigan. I was about to get on the road to leave, and all day I had been walking in and out of the house, out of the house, in and out of the house, just going to the car, coming back. But right when I was ready to just leave, to just really just get on the road, I walked out the door with my bag, and I was looking down, and I finally looked up, and I'm telling you, I'm not kidding you, the spider web was big, and it was the spider right in the middle, and I got so scared. Ah! I dropped my belongings, stuff started spilling. And of course, my mom thought it was funny because she was like, "You so scary." But I don't believe in coincidences. I do feel like the spiders was trying to get my attention, and it could be some form of an ancestor. I don't know if it's a protective one. I don't know if it's one that, or another. I'm gonna give you another instance. I was in Ghana, and the people who organized my trip, I felt like they was playing with me. I felt like they was playing with me. And so I was getting frustrated. I'm like, y'all playing with me. I gave y'all the money for this trip to do this and that, and I'm not getting that experience. And so the lady talking to me, and I'm just watching her, and she like talking, and she trying to convince me. She's like, I don't know what you thinking. And while she talking, somebody walked past with a shirt with a spider on it that say Anansi. And at that time, in my mind, I had already made up my mind that Anansi was a trickster spirit. So I'm like, oh, you tricking me. You trying to trick me. Yeah. So, anyways, that's what I got from this. So let me make the connection. So how does this connect, right? So essentially, um, for a thesis, I am working on a character that I'd like to develop. Her name will be Aunt Nancy or Auntie Nancy, and she will take on the embodiment of a black widow. And it's a play on words, of course, because we're talking about this spider, but we're also talking about an old woman, an old wise woman, a widowed woman, right? And then very much so, the old woman who lives up the hill by herself, and everybody's afraid to visit her house because they think she's going to eat them or something like that, right? And I'm still developing the character, but as far as movement, the movements, first of all, it's going to be very opposite of what I'm usually used to doing, which is some dark, eerie stuff. It's going to be some dark, eerie stuff with this, but I'm looking at African, first of all, I'm looking at things, movement that's more crouchy and African centered, drums, things like that. But just wanted to lay that out a little bit. Um, where else? Where else? Where else? Uh, there's a lot. There's a lot. Uh, okay, workshop development stuff. Let me keep going. Okay. I just wanted to lay that out really quick as far as artistic direction. But let me get back into I got so many hats. Please follow me. Please follow me. I wanted to get back into the research element. So that's artistic direction stuff. I want to get back into the research element. Okay. So from a research method in dance sciences book, I was able to lay out the different methods used. Like I said, Ife Tayo Kitwana, she used a lot of different methods and she collected qualitative data and then was able to quantify it by tallying. I'll just show you what she did. I'm gonna come back to this part. Don't worry. I'm gonna come back to that. But she quantified the qualitative data, right? So it says related words from the in-depth interview, statements, responses. So she took certain words that people used to express their experience with traditional West African dance, and then you quantified it, right? So what many people said they felt a sense of community, spirituality, fitness. You get it. So I plan to take this same framework and apply it when I do another Afro dance therapy class, but for the sake of collecting information. So that is information applied. I'm collecting information, right? Two different studies. So back to um research method in dance science. I'm having deja vu right now. Uh we have five types of research. So which research is best? We have historical and analytical, which is designed to report and analyze past events in a ways that create insight. We have descriptive, it's designed to identify and describe the characteristics of what exists or what is currently placed in a dancer's world. And then through the descriptive, you have observational, you have surveys and interviews, you have uh yes, descriptive case studies, case reports, qualitative research approach to description that uses intense observation. Yes, same thing. Okay, then the third way is correlation research, identifies and quantifies relationships between naturally occurring variables and other uncontrollable variables. You have intervention research, which involves making systemic changes to an independent variable and observing the effects of the dependent variable. And then you have experimental research designed to assess and explain causal relationships by carefully controlling the application of an independent variable and carefully controlling, or excuse me, um, and carefully observing any corresponding changes in the dependent variable. So we're starting with descriptive, right? We're going to do observational and informal interviews, right? So, type of research, uh, descriptive, and it's going to be observational and informal interviews. And so, as I was mentioning earlier, when I was talking about Blumenbach and all of his friends who conducted the studies that justified slavery, um, it was very much observational. Let me sit back and watch them from a distance and take notes. But as a lot of Black Americans started entering the field, I think one of the most popular ones I read, which I thought was very interesting and very transformative to the discipline. Let me see what his name was really quick. He was the one who was actually he was a blind ethnographer, and he would go into bars. His name was Gwotney. Gwotney. He basically did a lot of informal interviews. He would go to a bar or go to a church and do what he called folk seminars, which was basically like, imagine you at the bar or at the barber shop and everybody's talking openly and freely, Um, so that's the sort of so-called research that I'll be conducting to learn more. And then it goes into participant observation, right? So you're not especially me as a dancer. Dang, I never touched on Catherine. I never touched on Catherine Dunn. I'll come back. Let me do it like this. I'm gonna do participant observations. And then right now while I'm writing this, I'm thinking about participant observation. I'm gonna also write, or I wrote it already. I'm thinking about participant observation, but I'm also thinking about instances in which I will only be observing, because, for example, when I mentioned uh, the ways in which dance can be used for healing, and one of them was through spiritual possession. I was talking to one of my dance teachers, and she is a Yoruba priest. And I was like, I don't get possessed. I just straight up was like, I don't want to get possessed. Like, I'm not open to being possessed. I'm more so number two, the mastery of movement. I want to master my body. I want to master self. I want to learn how to move my body. And I'm not just talking about my physical body, I'm talking about my spiritual body as well, right? I'm talking about my energetic body. I don't want to be possessed. I would rather me be the one who is in charge of facilitating my healing process than to rely on an outside source. And this is what she told me. She said, she started laughing first. She laughed. She laughed first. This is Mama Ayo. She laughed first. And then she said, When you start to understand your connection to the ancestors or to the people before you through your bloodline, then some things will just happen naturally. She started making me think about what we call the Akashic records, or just this idea and understanding that we are connected to our family through our blood. So when certain situations happen, or when certain under certain conditions, things will happen. And so although I'm still not open to possession, I understand what she was saying, right? Like, I have a brother that passed away. He know he don't need to be hopping in my body, but we share the same blood. We had the same parents, grandparents. And so sometimes I do feel like, I don't want to say that he's speaking through me, but like I'll say something that he would say. And when like my parents, my mom or something perceived it, they're like, oh, that was Alonzo. That was him. So just wanted to lay that out. Next thing, research method. We said descriptive. Um, how to describe my experience as a dancer and a researcher. Identify and describe the variables as they exist in a specific environment. Qualitative or quantitative, usually a case study looking at one participant versus a group, which nomial versus normative, describing average or typical characteristics of a sample. So this is another thing. When I was taking my performance practice, or excuse me, performance studies class, nobody wanted to discuss their biases, right? So if it's my job to describe the, it says to describe the group, describe, it says identify and describe the variables. If it's my job to describe a person, I'm going to be describing them based on my mindset or my experience and my perspective, based on my history, based on my upbringing, based on my experiences, right? Um, versus if say, okay, I'm Black American, but if somebody else is maybe from Europe, their description may be different. It's based on your biases. I thought it was very interesting that nobody in the class wanted to lay their biases on the table. And so, what does that mean? When people are continuously contributing to this discipline, sharing their research on different communities, they're not first acknowledging their biases in a transparent way. They're just reporting. And so, this is one thing I want to be able to make sure that I do, is first acknowledge my biases and my perspective and my experience and why I might view things the way I view them. To kind of put a disclaimer when I use certain words to describe what I'm seeing. It says identify. Hold on, let me put this first. Lay out biases, or biases, as they say, right? That's number one. Then number two, it says identify and describe variables, which the variables would be um, the environment, the people, the tools and instruments like music, clothes. Um, as it says, describe the variables as they exist in a specific environment. And so, in order for me to be able to describe and identify the variables as they exist in a specific environment, I need the perspective of the people in the environment. I'll see a drum and I'll just call it a drum. But if I ask the person what this is, they'll tell me what it is. They might not say drum, they might call it something else, right? So that's important. It's still a drum, but they might name it something else, right? Like I just wrote out earlier before I erased all this. Uh, in the Congo, their drums, they call it ngomas, right? Okay, cool. Then we have qualitative or quantitative. I'm gonna be doing qualitative. And then for this study, I'll be doing qualitative research. Just and it'll be uh it'll be a little bit of both. It'll be auto ethnography, how I feel, and then it'll be, your regular ethnography with your informal interviews. So it's gonna be auto and then your regular ethnography. So yeah, we're conducting and I'll ask about the face of it, the dance one, the people. Usually a case study, looking at one participant. Okay, they want you to focus on if I'm gonna focus on a group or if I'm gonna focus on uh if I'm gonna look at one participant. So me, I'm gonna look at me as one participant, and that's gonna be nominal, and then I'm gonna look at the group that I'm learning from. That's gonna be normative. Cool. And then we have I have to create a set of questions or criteria that is vital to identify the variables and lead to more questions. Researchers should always ask themselves, who am I in relation to the study? Right. And this what I mean, lay out the bias. Who am I? My positionality, right? As a Black American, is there any power struggles? Not just as a Black American, but as a woman, um, someone who doesn't know the language, doesn't know tree, um, someone who's a lighter skin color. I have to look at these things. What else? What was the thing that they said? Uh, set of questions. So my set of questions is, um, are there any dances for healing? Are there any dances for healing? That's the number one question, right? What's the names of it? Who's allowed to do it? How does the tradition work? These are the things, the questions that I'm looking at, right? And which I have a friend who's like, yeah, but those people they do it in the village in the back corner. It's not public, right? Like a lot of these practices are protected and they're not public. So um yes. Create a mind map for research questions, which I've already been doing and I've been getting a lot of answers, which is why I have all this stuff on the table. And hold on, let me see. Because some of them are in here. Hold on. I did create a mind map. It's right here. My mind map. I'll just read some of it. Um, I think, okay, research question. What elements of West African dance music and culture can be used to uplift Black communities? And then, of course, that pushed off to other questions. Which Black community? Who is in the Black community? Or who in the Black community? Um, what does Black American and traditional West African dance music and culture have in common, which I've also been discussing? What does uplift mean? I've already answered that. I identified that in the beginning. Or what the issue is that I'm trying to resolve, right? And then why West African dance? Why not like hip hop or another cultural? Why not another dance or music or something like that? And um, it's because racism influences our culture a lot. Can a traditional West African dance music and culture help to minimize our issues? And so that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at also um, how how these traditional dances or dance traditions are used for coping with such things. I was looking at something. I was looking at dance, a dance. Well, no, it wasn't dance. It was a performance practice by some. I want to say they was African. It was in French. So what I was understanding was that it was a croix, and there was like a group of working men who, after work, they would engage in this ritual that allowed them to kind of escape their reality of being oppressed by the colonizer. And so in this practice, they would, do the ritual. They would have the libations and the animals and the blood and all this, right? And they'll go through the possession, but in talking to my professor, it wasn't full on possession; it was visitation, as he called it. And um, they would reenact these scenarios where the colonizer, like they would portray the colonizer. They had like these hats and these wooden guns, and they would parade around as the colonizer in order to kind of like feel like they're again having that control, um, and having a sense of relief. And they said, okay, once they're done, they're done. They don't feel the way they felt before, whatever the case may be. Um, and so just looking at uh, the traditions, the dance traditions, and how they have continued all the way to where we are right now. And what are the commonalities? What are the things that we kept? And I've identified some things, right? Within our music, within our movement. Um, yes. Hold on, so I don't lose my other page. Okay, cool. I think I'm gonna go back. Yep, 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 yep. Those was the countries I identified. Hmm. Okay, cool. Okay, back to this. Back to this. So we got our questions. Let me get a little bit more specific. The answer is yes to this question, but I'm looking for is so these questions are inside of me. Hold on 1 second. Are there dances? How okay. How do let me get this book because I think I wrote some down with when I was with I went to go visit Melissa Birch so she can kind of help me prepare for my studies. Okay, that's from a whole nother class, child. Let's go back. I wrote it down somewhere. Hold on 1 second. Okay, hold on. Let's see where we put it at. I wrote this down. I went to go see her a couple weeks ago now. Mm, come on. That's not it. Sorry, they went through that. Summer research proposal. Is this it? I think this is it right here. I think this is it. Okay, okay. I think this is it right here. I think this is it. Okay, here we go. Should okay, okay. Melissa Birch tells me that my research proposal should contain pertinent theoretical issues and debates raised as a basis of the working statement of the project. So we've already went through that, all of those readings, right? And then uh, uh, what is my claim? What am I claiming? That dance and music is used as a tool. I don't think this is the right one. I've used dance as a tool. I don't think this is the right one. How do West Africans use dance traditions as a tool? How do Ghanaians use dance traditions as a tool for community healing? And so it's hard to kind of go in with a clear mindset if I feel like I already know stuff, right? Like I feel like I already know the drum is an element, but okay, African traditional dance with ballet technique. Okay, yeah, this is something else. I need to find yeah, the parts. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Found it. Okay, here's the questions. Investigate the drum and the movement associated. So the rhythms, movements associated, rhythms. What is the role of the drum? How is the drum used for uplifting communities? Also, uh, there is an emphasis on young people or just maybe like young adults. Um, ask the question as if you're interested in what's happening. So, what's happening in Guinea? So, when I was in Ghana, I noticed that there were a lot of the same issues that we're having in the Black community, like, um, well, not well, yeah. Uh, the women make a substantial, like they, oh, how can I say this? Black women are educated and oftentimes have more skills. How can I say this? The black men, there's more educated, skilled black women that's making money than there are uh, educated black men, educated, skilled black men making also money. And so I seen this same issue in Ghana as well, where there's the same thing. Okay. So I'm wondering if this is also happening in Guinea. How does it work? How does it relate to movement? Right? How do they understand what they're doing? And this is hard because there's certain questions you have to ask because sometimes it's common knowledge for them, and then they expect you to also for it to be common knowledge for you. And so the answers they give are simple and not as expansive. So if you ask a follow up, there might be like a level of irritation of like, I answered that question, or that's common knowledge. Like, are you dumb? I felt like that before. Oh, okay. Um, what is their understanding of what they're doing? What are they doing? What is their analyst? Um, it says consider a comparative study. So that might be another. Hold on, let me go back. That might be another thing I have to add up here as one of the ways to go about one of the types of research. Yeah, consider a comparative study. So that might be another type of research that I can do, which I am, right, Ife? Yeah. Yep. Okay. And then uh, think about this without considering the Black community. Don't think about extracting, think about just being interested in learning. What are the key elements of traditional African performing arts? So I am thinking about doing formal interviews, but I don't really like to do formal interviews because it's uncomfortable. And then what are the elements of the dance? How is it done? If I have more questions, I think that's it. So that's the questions. Boom. We got the questions out. Then we have the next portion. Probably have to start writing on this side. Um, mm, use a scale 1 to 3 or 1 to 10 for movements or responses. Used as interviews are used as follow up for observations to confirm or correct the research findings. Okay, surveys and interviews, cross sectional, a snapshot picture of current situation, duration and nature of measure change, correlation, or explanation. How to study what dancers are thinking or feeling, or aesthetics of dance, types of qualitative research, ideal for researching sensitive topics, ensure anonymous, common approaches, ethnography, grounded theory. Okay, cool. We're past that point, babe. Um, proposing and reporting what audience do I want to propose or report my research? What's most important to share? We're past that. What's most important to share? That's a good question. What's most important to share? Apply research to practice. That's a okay, we're not past that yet. Okay, let's go back a little bit. We have uh, what does dance science research involve? What is dance research? What is research paradigm? Participants, setting, and variables. How to select participants, when and where to conduct research. What makes data valid? Measurement, measure reliability versus procedural fidelity. Okay. I'm not doing any IRB stuff, so managing, analyzing, and presenting data, steps in the research data cycle, analyst techniques, how to present research results. Okay. So yeah, that's where we are right now, right? So um I'm in the thick of it. I'm in the thick of it, and I'll be going to Ghana to finish learning about, well, not finish, but get deeper into learning about dance for healing. Um, I'm gonna finish this, but that's where I am right now. I think I've been on here over an hour. Let me see. Mm, mm. I've been on here over an hour, and um, yeah, how was that? A minute, 145 minutes. Yeah, that's like 2 hours. Um, and so hold on, let me see something real quick. Let me pull this up. I'm going to go to page chapter 9. Should I go to chapter 8? What makes the data valid? A valid assessment is one that assesses what it purports to assess. It is relevant to the question you're trying to answer or the hypothesis you want to test. Review the purpose statement you wrote. What capacity, performance, perception, or experience will you need to assess to answer your research question? You might use a mental stress scale or gather self reported qualitative information about participants' perceived stress. In a dance science, it determines how I assess the outcome that is relevant to your research question may be an important prerequisite. Two common approaches to evaluating the relevance of a measurement approach include logical validity and construct validity. Logical validity involves asking key stakeholders whether your measurement approach offers a reasonable representation of the ability or capacity you are studying. You might provide experienced ballet teachers. Okay, okay. So consult the professionals. Okay. In addition to assessing an outcome in a manner that is relevant to your research purpose, your assessment approach will need to generate consistent or reliable results. If you were to use, okay, okay, measure, make sure you're measuring with the same ruler. Some of this is basic. Okay. I don't think there's too much. Yeah. I'm just gonna do observations and interviews. So yeah. Let me go to chapter 9 really quick. And that one is about managing, analyzing, and presenting data. Okay, they got a whole thing. Steps in research data cycle. Conducting pilot testing of the study procedures, instrument, and interview questions, and training all members of the research team are all essential steps for good data collecting. Being prepared and having contingency plans for how to address anticipated and unanticipated problems that may arise is essential. Consider how you address absences for testing. What will you do if essential equipment malfunctions? How will you treat raw data compromised by unanticipated conditions? For instance, when asking questions about performance anxiety during dance and unexpected dance related or unexpected event related to the dance study creates anxiety. In research terms, rather than postmortem analysis, that is analysis of what happened after the fact, you can do pre-mortem analysis. Put simply in the analysis, go you go step by step over your protocol and try to figure problems and issues. Having considered these issues before they occur will prepare you to respond to complications, even if you will not be able to anticipate all possibilities. When pilot testing, decide the type and forms of records needed for the study. Then share this protocol with all members. Okay, hold on, let me go because they got a good little. It says, let me write this. So this is what I'm doing right now. Devise protocol. Then it goes to pilot tests, which I did. So I devised the protocol a while ago. I wrote all of this last year. My pilot test was when I went to Ghana last summer. And I did mostly videos and I did some informal interviews. Um, and I'm going to also add, I have my comparative research that I'm going to do, but I'm going to add like journaling or field notes on here. Um, but we got pilot tests, refine protocol, which is what I'm doing now. Then you have collect, and that's what I'm going to be doing next. Collect. Then you have organize, which I'm kind of doing now as well since I did a pilot test. And then store. And that's what I need to do. Store this information so that I don't lose it. Extract, which is very interesting because I'm not supposed to be extracting, but that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not supposed to go in with the mindset of extracting, but that's exactly what I'm doing. Analyze, analyze it, interpret, and then devise the protocol again. Okay, so um actually this interpret for me is gonna go into make a show or make choreography or make dance program or I'm gonna just put produce. Okay, let's just keep it keep it cute. Produce, interpret, then produce work. Whether that will be me writing about this, me making a class, me making a show. But that's where we at with that part. Okay, cool. Next. Ensuring data integrity and security. When you're actually recording data, create a way to review data in real time. This process will allow you to adjust the data collection. Okay. Second, the protocol will help you write up your research paper. Third, some research approaches use this data feedback to guide decisions about the next study phase. Okay. Create formal written protocol, record all steps, backup, process raw data, keep raw data files separate from other files, create copies of the master data files, and only analyze copies. Okay. And use user friendly names for data items and codes. Data types in data science, multiple data types to answer questions. Often quantitative researchers observe phenomenon, develop research questions. Qualitative research generally observe and analyze information in natural settings to explore phenomena, understand issues, and answer questions. Quantitative phenomena. Quantitative researchers are able to provide rich descriptions and explanations of social phenomena. Okay, and data analysis techniques. How will these data help answer my questions? You may need to provide readers with descriptive statistics. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Nominal, distinct categories. Order of categories has no meaning. One category is not greater than the other. Not cannot combine to make a mean. So let me see. What was it? Create categories. So for my one participant, which is me, I need to create categories. Then it says can count frequency data analysis functions can count frequencies, cannot make a means, count frequencies. Measure of center interpretations can say one is different from another. Uh, compare, compare this and that. Okay, cool. Next, we're making progress. Measures of central tendency and dispersion for quantitative data. I'm just doing qualitative. So, yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, that was the yellow questions, right? Within subject experiments between group. So let me go to chapter 16. Within subject experiments, as distinct from pre, post, or within group comparisons, focus on the performance of individuals as the unit of analysis. Other labels used to describe this is single case design, single subject design. They seem to imply that only one participant is studied, while results are analyzed individual by individual. Is common for within study experiments to involve 3 to 5 participants. The ability to evaluate the causal influence of 4 on a DV using a small number of participants offers some advantages. It may be easier to understand the features of within subject experiments by contrasting them with the more familiar between group. And between group experiments, a sizable number of participants, the researcher sample is randomly assigned to one of two or more groups, with each group experiencing a different treatment. Okay, yeah, I'm not doing any treatments. This is not for this study. Okay, cool. To go back. I'm just collecting information right now. I am not uh I'm not doing anything like that just yet. Okay, let's go back. We have the orange research ethics and communities with core values or principles inform behaving ethically. Tools like that. Correlation and regression analysis, meaning and differences. How can you use correlations and regressions in dance science? What are the meanings of and differences between correlation and regression? How do regression analysis add to correlation? What does it mean if there's positive, negative, or no relation between two variables? How does this translate into dance settings? Case studies. Okay, cool. All right, I think that's it. That's it for my research portion. Finally got that out of the way. I'm going to use this as the basis. Should contain pertinent theoretical issues and debates raised as basis of the working statement. Okay, okay. So we have that, and that's all I really now it's just a matter. Oh, y'all couldn't even see me the whole time. Okay, now it's just a matter of writing 15 pages about everything I just said. Let me put everything where it go. All of that is gonna be all of this is the research. Like I think I have a little bit more. I have a little bit more. Okay, yeah, this is just some more of what I was already just looking at. Okay, cool. This is good. Everything else, this is for research conducting as far as I'm just gonna say extracting information from respective community. And then hold on, I wanna put this in the wrong place. So this is another place. Yeah, okay. And then this is for show. This is show stuff. It's for show. This is for class. teaching classes. This is for sure. All right. We on the ball. We on the ball, baby. Ugh. All right, so everything's in order. I'm gonna take a small break, come back, and write my paper, write my research paper. This is what I needed in order to do that. And I need to get through this, which I devised my protocol, did a pilot test when I went, refined it just now. I'll be going to collect more information when I go back to Ghana. When I come back, I'll organize it, store it properly, take what I will take out for the use of it, analyze it, interpret it, and then create my thesis work. And hopefully, the timeline for that, let me see, this was 2025. This was uh this was also 2025, but it was July. This was just now. What is it? April 2026. And then May through June, I'll be collecting. I guess July, I'll be organizing. Uh, yeah, I'll do this August. Um, and I need to have this all interpreted by like all of this needs to happen. Organize, store, extract, analyze. All this needs to happen in by August. August, it needs to be interpreted. I'm just gonna say July. July, it needs to be interpreted so that by August, I have everything ready to produce work. I ain't holding back no more. Between the devised protocol and refiner protocol, that's January. That's a whole over a year. So gotta get the ball rolling on this. Um, take a snapshot of that right there. Snapshot of that right there. I'm gonna take a break, come back, and do my paper.